Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade. Today we're going to be talking about a video. It's going to be a response video. So PWTorch put out a video called Debunking the Casual Fans Discourse in Pro Wrestling. It is by Robert Vallejos. The video is like 7 minutes and some change. Now in this video, he's going to, quote, debunk the casual fans discourse in pro wrestling. That's the thesis of this statement. I listened to it and said to myself, I want to bring this to my audience. I want you guys, I'm gonna let him talk and listen to what we have to say. And then you let me know if he makes a good point or not. But of course, I'm going to be giving my thoughts as we go along. So far, I'm going to start about 40 seconds into the video. He's already told us about Forbidden Door, the event. Now, I'm recording this video after it was already announced that Forbidden Door is a sellout. It sold out all of the tickets, 14,000 tickets in Chicago, a smart town, which is, it is what it is, just like Philadelphia or some other places. Did very well. We don't know if they're scalpers or actual people. We don't know if they're quote-unquote bots or anything. We don't know. But it's great regardless. And I didn't think that it was going to be some kind of critical failure. I never really believed that it was going to lose money in that regard. My question with Forbidden Door, and I think I said this during Dynamite, if I didn't, I'll say it here, what's the split? Throughout history, there's always been these wrestling crossovers with New Japan, usually New Japan or AAA. So when AEW is doing stuff in New Japan and AAA, it's not really all that big of a deal. It's not groundbreaking. It's not forbidden, to be quite honest. It's interesting, but it is what it is. But what's the split? What is New Japan getting out of this? How much money are they going to make off of ticket sales, merchandising, et cetera, et cetera? I'm interested in seeing that, and those details are going to be completely and totally obscured. We may never know. But let's get into this piece right here, because this stuff is going to be very interesting. So let's go.
Chances are, if you've engaged in wrestling Twitter over the past week, you've encountered some version of the argument that the Forbidden Door might be a fun concept, but it does nothing to bring in new fans. Or as they're known as in wrestling discourse, the casual fans. Yes, the casual fans. If wrestling was politics, the casual fans would be the swing voters that get way too much attention in the lead up to a primary. That's definitely them. But
here's the thing about the swing voter or the casual fan is that when people are already fully in the tank for you, then you don't have to concern. You have to, of course, play to the base. The base is perfectly fine. You want to play to the base, but you can't win with just the base. You can't win with just the base. You can't be successful with just your base fans. Now, he's going to acknowledge this, but he's going to acknowledge it in a passing sense. So I just want people to understand that. Folks think like, why do you have to appeal to the people who don't care? It's like there's a lot of people who are aloof in the world. Winning in any sense is to get those people to be interested in whatever it is you're doing. That's the goal. Not to get yes, keeping people is easier than turning new people, but that's part of growth, So let's get into it.
if some on Twitter are to be believed, AEW is making a massive mistake in making an event that will only appeal to their base and not appeal in any way to that coveted casual audience. Now, before you accuse me of building a straw man, I should note that a lot of these takes have originated with people who are cozy with WWE. Now, unlike some former champions, I'm not going to claim that WWE is paying these influencers. I would never let that control my narrative.
Okay, wait a minute. He thinks that only WWE influencers or WWE paid shills think that New Japan AEW crossover will not appeal to casuals, or that this is something only they're talking about. I think he's fundamentally misunderstanding the nature of the wrestling space. Okay, for starters, I don't think WWE has too many quote-unquote shills. There's not a lot of them. All right? There's probably, as far as, big name WWE shills, how many are there really? most everybody who is in the wrestling journalism space is fully in the tank for AEW for one reason or another. They just hate WWE. They are big fans of Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. They like all the indie wrestlers that's being signed, and they love the whole Ring of Honor stuff. They like the crossovers with New Japan. They know all the New Japan guys. You know, they're just fans of New Japan. You know, WWE recently did thing, and I want anybody to bring them down a peg. You know, whatever the case may be. There's tons of reasons why people are anti-WWE. And there's tons of voices that are anti-WWE. Who are the pro-WWE people who are saying this doesn't appeal to the casual fans? Now, of all of the podcasts and different people that I've listened to, there's only really one, which is Conan K100, that repeatedly, because Disco Inferno says this a lot. You know, none of this will appeal to the casual fans. I guess Vince Russo. So I guess two, right? You know, Jim Cornette is anti-WWE too, for the most part. And so is Vince Russo. They're pretty, you know, on the fence about WWE. They give them good praise for one thing, they take it away. So it's like one step forward, 3 steps back when it comes to those two guys. And K100 seems to just keep it real. So who are these influencers? I think he should have specified who the influencers were. But I think if you're an average person in the wrestling space generally, you realize that this doesn't appeal to the casual fans because most people have no idea who the Japanese guys are. You don't need to create a conspiracy theory in order to come to that understanding. Everybody knows nobody knows who these guys are.
That's not what's happening here. But what is happening is that there are individuals with influential platforms that benefit from giving WWE favorable coverage.
Who?
That's not a hot take. I think it's pretty obvious if you analyze things.
Who?
And the framing of this debate serving WWE is crucial to further analyze the take.
Huh?
After all, before AEW existed, a lot of the discourse surrounded WWE and their inability to both keep their hardcore audience and draw new fans. Funny how the tables have suddenly turned.
Huh?
But that's a conversation from like 2017. We can discard that along with the Roman needs to turn heel conversation. That's over. That's done with. Moving on. But what's not going away is the constant bickering online between the AEW and WWE hardcore fans. These people love their wrestling companies more than anyone loves anything. And given that...
Okay, so we were supposed to believe that WWE has an inability to maintain the hardcore audience and gain new fans based off what? Based off what? And then the video, it's a video, did a flashback to 2017. That was 5 years ago. All right, so 5 years ago, what? I don't know. Like, it would be one thing if the buildings were empty. You know, I know sometimes the Raw is like half empty. You know, that's just undeniable. Sometimes the buildings are half empty. Sometimes house shows aren't doing too good. You know, sometimes but never in the history of the business is it ever going to be perfect all the time. The situation that this guy is saying is I'm trying to figure out when did these people leave? Like what happened? What maybe he'll answer this question later. So let's see what's going on here.
We're in a time where we now have 2 national promotions in the US. Each move gets judged, not on its own merit, but on its relationship to its competition. And in 2022, major promotions cater to similar but distinct audiences.
All right, so I'll agree with this point that there's similar but distinct audiences between AEW and WWE. I'll agree with that, and I'll also agree with the position that people don't let things just happen. You know, they almost always are comparing these things. I don't know why. It just doesn't make much sense. But wrestling is the only place where you could have a live sport that really has any type of competition. The NFL hasn't had competition in forever. You know, it's been a monopoly for longer than WWE was a monopoly. So the same thing with the NBA and the NHL or whatever. Even if you said all about the XFL or the USFL, they were never really competition. They were smaller football leagues. You know, even if they had significant amounts of money, Most of them never got out of like a season or two. You know, like they barely got really scratched the surface of what they could do. They never really challenged the NFL. So if you consider WWE to be a monopoly, what do you consider the NBA or the NFL? What do you consider NHL or Major League Baseball? You know, and ratings and attendance for those companies go up and down too. There's some good years, there's some bad years, there's some good years and some bad years. You know, baseball, for instance, took it on the chin the last couple of years. It used to be America's sport. Now football is. You know, where's all the hardcore baseball fans? I don't know. Well, let's continue with this thing.
WWE, they're continuing their quest to become the Disney of people in spandex doing body slams. Meanwhile, AEW is a cross between the legacy of WCW and the remnants of the post-Monday Night War indie scene. And I gotta say, there's enough space for both products to exist. And they're both fairly healthy at the moment.
All right, there's nothing offensive about that statement.
And that's kind of the point of this video. Why is it that online wrestling fans have to debate the merits of the Forbidden Door show? It really just shows that this is a proxy battle between the AEW-WWE debate.
Okay. Saying that you can't debate the desire to have a Forbidden Door show. Well, remember, the Forbidden Door concept, by the way, is created by the idea that WWE doesn't work with other companies. So the whole Forbidden Door thing is a national wrestling promotion is sharing talent and giving other promotions and independent wrestlers space on their show. That's the entire concept behind the Forbidden Door, not just the pay-per-view, but everything they've done that's been considered Forbidden Door, which was coined by Hiroshi Tanahashi, not Tony Khan. All right, so that's the entire idea. But like I said before, WCW did this. TNA did this. Ring of Honor did this. AEW is not doing anything different. So I don't understand. But I agree with him that a lot of people who are talking about the New Japan crossover show are just talking about it in terms of this is what AEW needs to do in order to shore up the hardcore fan base, and they're eschewing the casual audience. And maybe that's not a necessary debate to have. I can agree with that, but that's not going to stop us from having a debate. There's a lot of stupid debates in wrestling space. There's a lot of stupid ones. If we're going to delete a lot of the stupid conversations people have, we wouldn't have any, because most of them are just dumb. You know, whether, a rating went up a point or went down a point or whatever the case may be, people are either throwing babies in the air or breaking out the pitchforks and torches one way or the other. A lot of that makes no sense, especially considering when you consider that ratings are going to be decided over the long term. So any individual week is not going to be as important as the trend. So whatever, but let's continue.
And quite frankly, this specific argument is a really weird hill to die on. I mean, AEW has had their fair share of mishaps. Looking at you, Revolution 2021.
Huh.
Yikes. Okay. And honestly, it might not even be accurate. Let me explain. Huh? The implication of this criticism is that doing a show like Forbidden Door only attracts the customers that are already going to buy the product regardless.
True.
These are the taken for granted hardcore fans.
True.
Apparently, they have absolutely no agency and will buy anything a wrestling company sells them.
Nobody said that, though. Nobody made that statement. That's a straw man. What we're saying is that people who are going to watch AEW and are going to buy AEW pay-per-views are just going to buy this one. 9 times out of 10, those people are already familiar with New Japan. And they're not off-put by this, is what most people are saying. Most people are saying if you like AEW, you like Kenny Omega and the Bucks, you already knew them, you think they're big stars in your mind already, this doesn't seem off-putting to you. But to the average person, that's going to look at this and be like, who is Hiroshi Tanahashi? Who are these people? And maybe they have no interest in knowing or caring. And then you're not going to build this thing up or whatever the case may be. Now, maybe they're going to do some build for it. Who knows? But we're looking at this thing and we're saying to ourselves, who is more likely to be the audience that's going to purchase a pay-per-view featuring a crossover between an organization that doesn't really have any footprint in the United States at all? The New Japan footprint in the United States consists of their very, very poorly rated television show on Access TV. Now, Access TV is an absolutely garbage tier site. So it's not, but when you look at what New Japan puts out there, it's usually matches that are months old that you could Google and find out who won. There's no specials or anything like that they do for Access TV. They do nothing special for the United States other than the occasional crossover with an indie fed. And we're supposed to take this and treat it like it's a big deal. It's like most people don't see it that way. That's all we're really saying. We're not saying that hardcore fans are robots who are just going to gobble up whatever you put in front of them. But there are some people who are. There are some, hardcore fans who will just gobble up whatever AEW puts in front of them. And it is what it is. WWE has fans like that too. So why can't we criticize them? But let's see what's going on here.
Must be nice. The AEW White Knights on Twitter seem to be stuck in this notion that the only job of AEW is to attract new fans and not at all cater to that base.
Nobody said that either.
On its face, that's somewhat of a reasonable take. Obviously, AEW needs to grow its business. Every company does. And we have evidence that the last two boom periods in professional wrestling coincided with interest from people that weren't necessarily your typical wrestling fan.
Absolutely true. Rock and Wrestling and the Attitude Era. Now, Rock and Wrestling seems to be almost scripted. You had Hulk Hogan, who was a guy that wanted to be in a band. He learned how to play the guitar. And all of a sudden, he becomes the biggest wrestling star on the planet Earth at right around the time MTV is created. And it's almost as if it was synergy between the two. Then you had the Attitude Era, where, you had this underwhelming zeitgeist of, vulgar pop culture, the South Park and all that kind of stuff. The movies were getting kind of vulgar. I think American Pie and all that kind of stuff started to come out. The Jerry Springer, everything was salacious and filled with sex and over-the-top violence. And WWE kind of mirrored that. So, yes, it wrapped up the casual fan who was already into the sex and the violence and all that kind of vulgarity and other means of pop culture. That stuff was popular. And so wrestling did it, and that became popular too. The problem was both of those things are fads, and they could not last for the long term. That's the unfortunate truth of the matter. But let this man continue.
But that's also been over 20 years at this point. Speaking of 20 years ago, let's go back a little bit. It's no accident that some of the biggest successes on pay-per-view that WWE had post the Monday Night War were when they actually catered to that hardcore fan base.
Oh, really?
Back in 2001, the year that basically birthed the wrestling landscape for the next 2 decades,
okay,
Steve Austin was in the middle of an ill-fated heel turn, and pay-per-view numbers were in the toilet.
Okay.
Instead of gaining viewers in the wake of the demise of WCW, the WWF found themselves losing their own loyal base. That was until July.
Wait. Here's the thing. I just said, and it's true, it bears out. That was mostly casual fans. Like the casual fans were the people who were wrapped up in the clickety clicks back and forth between WCW and WWE. There's a lot of people who are invested solely in the Monday Night War. That's it. That's all they were really invested in is am I going to watch Nitro or am I going to watch Raw? Once that debate was settled and there was no more Nitro, there was no reason to watch Raw. Because they're like, okay, the competition is going to make both shows better. But now there's no competition anymore. There's no reason to watch the show. That's like saying, okay, I'm interested in the Packers versus the Lions football game. And then the Packers lose and they go home. And then all of a sudden, the Lions are going to just go out there and scrimmage. The Lions versus the Lions. And I'm like, this isn't as interesting as when the Packers were on the other side of the field. It's not as interesting. And so it dribbles away over time. And then, of course, most of those people are going to be casuals because they were interested in the back and forth, who's going to jump, yada, yada, yada. They were interested in that crap. They weren't really interested in the show. They were interested in the drama around it. That's why we have so many channels nowadays who talk about the Monday Night Wars and the Attitude Era, infinitum. I've said I want to try to avoid that shit as much as possible on this channel. I didn't say that, but I'm stating it right now. I'm going to avoid the Attitude Era and the Monday Night Wars as much as fucking possible on this channel. Because I get so fucking tired of hearing about it. It's like every channel has 100,000 videos about Monday Night Wars and Nitro and all the pay-per-views surrounding each. It's like, oh God, it's fucking exhausting. There was wrestling before that and after that. For fuck's sake, come on. But he's right. You know, pay-per-views went down, ratings went down because the war was over. WWE won. There was no reason to get back and forth anymore. There was no reason for them to really engage with the casual fans anymore. They won. You know, they were playing Hungry Hunky Hippos and WWE won. So now a lot of the WCW's hardcore fan base didn't watch WWE before that. They're not going to turn to it. And they weren't interested. And WCW had already cultivated their own casual fans too through all the stuff that they had done with the NWO and with Jay Leno and Karl Malone and Dennis Rodman. They had already done that stuff. And so now that they're gone, those casual fans aren't just going to automatically jump ship to WWE. Most of them went underground. They started watching TNA and Ring of Honor and all that kind of shit. So, I mean, it is what it is.
When the Invasion pay-per-view became one of the most successful non-major shows in company history.
Okay.
The build was disconnected. The payoff was terrible. Okay. But just the idea of WWF going up against ECW and WCW was enough to really sell this thing. Kind of sounds like a familiar situation.
Well, not really. It wasn't that. You also have to, you know, you're kind of deleting some of the context here. Is you have for starters, for a lot of people, and a lot of people at the time believed that it was probably going to be Rock versus Austin. Now, you had to have been reading the dirt sheets for it to be otherwise. They're going to put it on Kurt Angle or whatever. But the average person look at it and says, Rock is on one side of this tournament. Austin is on the other side of this tournament. It's probably going to be Rock versus Austin. Then you have, they're going to unify the WCW and the WWF world titles. That is going to get some people's attention because now they're seeing the last vestiges of WCW going away. You know, now it's going to be an undisputed champion in all of wrestling because WWE is officially in a monopoly at this point. Ring of Honor doesn't exist yet. TNA doesn't exist yet. There's no other wrestling promotion on television at this point in time. So creating the first ever undisputed world champion in wrestling was an interesting thing. You know, it was an aberration. It's not like it was proof of concept for anything. It was an aberration.
Fast forward a couple of years, they had two very successful pay-per-views cashing in on hardcore ECW nostalgia. That one did not turn out well in the end.
Oh, of course, no, it did not. But it should show that nostalgia doesn't work long term. You know, ECW was nostalgia, but ECW also was not mainstream. You have to understand, too, the ECW concept came from people being very, very passionate about ECW and WWE having all of that material and them saying, you know what, there's fans there who want ECW. Again, Vince was talked into this. It wasn't like he dreamed up, this will be a great idea, pal. It was, hey, Vince, you know what would be a great idea? If you did a one-off ECW show just to give the fans some closure. So when the first one night stand, when it was successful, everybody believed it was only going to be this one night. That's why it's called One Night Stand. They figured, that's it. We're going to have one more show for the ECW fan base, and that will be it. Nobody knew there was going to be another one. Nobody knew that. And then the second one was drawn WWE versus ECW. Rob Van Dam is going to be in the main event. He's wrestling John Cena. So now you got John Cena for the mainstream audience because he's the top guy in WWE. And you have the hardcore audience, the ECW faithful. They're being drawn in by the ECW name and the fact that Rob Van Dam, an ECW guy, is going to challenge for the WWE title. So again, this is some really good synergy here. And the hardcore fan base is only half of that second ECW show. They're all of the first one because they thought it was over after that. But they're only half that second one. And then, of course, WWE says, oh, shit, we can make ECW a thing. And that didn't work out. That didn't work out at all. It wasn't a good idea.
And it's true. These events, they didn't result in boom periods. But that completely removes the context of what was happening around them. If in August, Kazuchika Okada is subservient to the bunny, we might be having a different conversation. But we'll wait and see. And it's not a one-to-one comparison, but it's also no accident that the WWE had a ton of pay-per-view success in the early 2010s by bringing in The Rock, someone who specifically catered to their older, more hardcore fan base.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. You think The Rock is some work rate indie guy that, you know, he appeals to the hardcore? No. The Rock appeals to the casual fan. A lot of people, when Austin left and when Rock left, they were like, you know what? Bye. The hardcore fan was still watching. That's the thing. The hardcore fan was still watching, even though The Rock was already gone. When The Rock came back, he came back as a movie star. He came back and everybody was like, wait a minute, The Rock's back. Hell yeah, I'm back on it. I ain't watched Raw in years. That didn't sound like a hardcore fan. I ain't watched Raw in years. And a lot of you are probably the same way. You don't realize that you're casual fans, but you are. You think you're a hardcore fan because you know who Dave Meltzer is and you read the dirt sheets, but you act in your behavior and your viewing habits say that you're a casual fan base. You're the casual fan. And guess what? That's fine. You know, that's fine. A lot of people think that they're the hardcore fans. They're not. They're casuals. You're just highly educated casuals. You know, you essentially window shop wrestling. You look at the reviews and, I'll watch it. Maybe, nah, I'm not going to watch that. You're window shopping, you know, and that's fine. But The Rock, to put The Rock in that category, like he was nostalgia, sure. But that was nostalgia for the casual fans, not for the hardcore audience. A lot of people in the hardcore fan base feel like you had to have The Rock there for business, but we're kind of like, we would rather see somebody else, rather see something else. I mean, and that's kind of how they always have that attitude. You know, when you bring back somebody, I would rather it be somebody else, because that's just kind of how they are. They're spoiled. But let's finish his thought.
Yes, I'm going to ignore the fact that around the same time, pushing CM Punk kind of wasn't the best thing for business. But
thank you.
Oh well.
Because that's exactly what was going on.
And again, I'll entertain the argument that wasn't really catering to their hardcore base as much as their lapsed fan base. AEW might be too fresh to have actual lapsed fans.
Wait a minute.
But the data showed...
Wait. Stop. Pause. AEW is too new to have a lapsed fan base. That much is true. But here is a different issue. AEW, just like TNA and just like a bunch of other wrestling promotions, their top draw for coming into the wrestling space is that there are all of these fans who loved Nitro and liked pro wrestling that was off-put by Vince McMahon's zany cartoon wrestling. All those people should support us because we're going to do real sports wrestling. We're going to do wrestling like you used to like it. You know, depending on who you are. You know, that was the draw. The draw is we're not WWE. Their audience was supposed to be the lapsed WWE audience. That's what it was supposed to be. Not lapsed AEW audiences, but lapsed WWE fans. That's who it was supposed to be. And CM Punk even came out, I believe I did a video on this, saying that there are no lapsed fans. But Tony Khan started the company, put all this money up, saying that, oh, well, there's a bunch of lapsed fans out there. Which one is it? You know, but so while AEW specifically is not old enough to have lapsed fans, that isn't the point. The point was they were supposed to tap into the zeitgeist of all of the other frustrated and angry hardcore wrestling fans, all the Ring of Honor fans who didn't like WWE, and all the people who loved TNA until TNA dicked themselves around and almost put themselves out of business. Those were supposed to be the AEW fan base. And now they amount to about 100, I won't say 100,000 people on pay-per-view, but like 1 million people a week, thereabouts. That's it. So they're obviously not attracting as many people as they thought they were going to.
So they have an audience that is often in flux. Despite having some loyalists, the viewer seems willing to judge the company based on their output. And let's face it, when we do compare the two companies, AEW has the advantage of not having history, and therefore they can engender more goodwill, and goodwill is something their competitor has squandered over the years.
Okay, there ain't nothing wrong with that. That's a statement. AEW doesn't have any history. They also don't have any scandals. So, I mean, that's good, at least for now. You know, but then TNA was at that point too. And then the scandals started happening. So eventually they will happen in AEW, but hopefully it won't be for several years off, because I hate that dark side of the ring ugliness.
Part of that squandering of goodwill has been taking the hardcore fan base for granted.
Okay.
For example, Cena and Roman look good on posters. Let's push them for years and years and years.
Wait a minute. They're successful, though. Roman's successful. John Cena is successful. Pay-per-view buys and attendance goes up when they're on the card. They're successful. Who gives a shit if some dweeb whose favorite wrestler is Orange Cassidy doesn't like Roman Reigns? Who cares? Vince is looking at it from the position of, I could make X amount of dollars by putting Roman Reigns in this spot. Can somebody else, the guy that you want me to push, can he match or exceed what I would make putting Roman Reigns in that spot? If the answer is no, Roman stays. If the answer is no, Cena stays. They tried pushing CM Punk. It didn't work. They tried pushing Daniel Bryan. It didn't work. Neither one of them was able to outdraw Cena. So why should we even be talking about replacing Cena? You're in a business. Why are you replacing your top money makers because some guys are booing? It's like, I'm looking at the cash register. I'm looking at the receipts. T-shirts sold. Attendance sold. Who cares about your fucking booze? Come on, man.
Great on the interview circuit. Make sure he gets more TV time than anybody else. Khali and Omos are tall. The channel surfer won't be able to look away. Or my favorite, NXT took it on the chin to AEW. Let's strip away everything people like about it.
Wait a minute. Well, I don't know about NXT, but the Giants has always been a part of WWE. And nobody's going to be off-put by the Giant because they don't overdo it. Usually they don't. Even when the Great Khali is a top guy, it's all about who's going to beat him. Not necessarily him going to be there for years and years, forevermore. That makes no sense. I want you to note the mocking way that he speaks about these things, though. Because it says that he is a hardcore fan, basically mocking the successful way that they have been running the business. But it is what it is. You know, these guys, they exist to do a thing, and they're doing their thing. So let's hear. There's not much more left. Probably like another minute or so.
Look away. Or my favorite, NXT took it on the chin to AEW. Let's strip away everything people like about it. Hardcore fan bases are reliable, but they're not permanent. And history has shown them to be actually very valuable. Anyone who's paying attention knows that fans aren't always the consumers. They're often a commodity that is traded between businesses. Okay. Fox and NBC Universal are willing to overpay for WWE programming because of that loyal fan base. A fan base they've been able to cultivate for nearly half a century.
Okay, all right. So there's issues with this whole thing. WWE is not traditional pro wrestling. It's different. You know, everybody knows that. It shouldn't be too much of a stretch to say that. Here's where he's kind of getting, for starters, he used the word overpay, which who's to say you're overpaying? Like, who's to say that NBC is overpaying? If NBC is happy about the investment that they put into WWE, how did they overpay? How did Fox overpay? Are you privy to information that Fox and NBC are not? Do you have documents that they don't have? You know, like you have to be careful when you using this kind of language. But let's be honest, WWE. The reason why people do business with Vince McMahon, and because he can be a scumbag, and absolutely, but because he's a scumbag that works for you. You know, Vince looks at, you know, hey, the pandemic I think was perfect for pure Vince McMahon scumbaggery. The greatest wrestling match ever. The eye for an eye match. Shit that he cannot possibly deliver. And he put it on a billboard somewhere, and people are looking at that shit like, the greatest wrestling match ever. Huh. What the fuck is that? And then they watched it. And then they came away from it. That wasn't the greatest wrestling match ever. It's like, you numbskull. It wasn't ever going to be. That was the hook to get you to watch this stupid fucking thing. That was the whole reason you watched it. If he'd just said Randy Orton versus Edge, in just another wrestling match, would you have watched it? But if you label it the greatest wrestling match ever, people are going to be like, I'm going to watch this match and prove that it's not the greatest wrestling match ever. All he wanted you to do was watch it. He don't care if you liked it or not. He doesn't care if it was true or not. It doesn't matter. All that matters is he's a scumbag who got you to watch this show. It's just like if you're a girl and you go out with a guy, he says he's got, hundreds of millions of dollars, but he's living with his mama right now because his mom is sick and she needs some help. And you're like, oh, he got nice shoes on. And you go back to his house and you have sex with him in his room. And then you find out everything was a lie. He probably is going to be like, shrug, too bad. You fell for it. Gotcha. Oh, you thought Rey Mysterio's eyeball was really going to fall out of his head? Gotcha. What the fuck is wrong with you? You're a moron. No, that was never going to happen. Yes, it was under, it's the craziest thing in the world. Like, it's the Jedi mind trick. And Vince knows the shit works. It's just marketing. That's all it is. All it is fucking marketing. This is going to be the greatest Royal Rumble. And then everybody watches it and it's fucking horse shit. It's like, yes, the whole point was just to get you to watch this shit. That's all it is. Just like, that's pure wrestling right there, though. Because, you have the loser leaves town. And the loser actually does leave town, but nobody ever said couldn't come back. He comes back. It happens. They treat you to... Wrestling is all about getting you to believe something is real that is not. That is what wrestling is. If Vince McMahon can get you to believe that there's somebody's eyeball is really going to come out of their head and you watch that fucking match thinking somebody's eyeball is going to come out of their head, you're the mark. You're an idiot. Gotcha. So, but he's a scumbag that works for NBC. Or at least at the point in time he's working for himself. It was all about getting eyeballs on the brand. That's what he's selling. He's selling eyeballs, all right, but not Rey Mysterio's eyeballs. He's selling yours and mine. We watched that shit. And then he goes to NBC and says, look at all the people who watched Rey Mysterio fake eyeball pop out of his head. We appreciate them, but they're idiots. Look at this shit. And NBC's like, hey, you guys are really willing to cut and run. You're really willing to play fast and loose with reality and facts and all that kind of shit in order to get the business done. We'll give you some money. Go ahead and keep doing it. And so now you got the most stupendous WrestleMania of all time. And people are like, they're Googling the word stupendous. They're looking it up in the dictionary. And then they watch this shit. It's like, how do you not know how basic marketing works? How do you not know how basic marketing works? That's why WWE gets so much business. Sometimes they underdeliver. The Rey Mysterio eyeball thing, the greatest wrestling match of all time thing. Sometimes they overdeliver. Sometimes they hit it just right. I think WrestleMania 38 was perfect. They hit it just right. But the bottom line is you continue to talk about the brand. The brand stays in the cultural milieu, people keep talking about it because Vince is willing to do whatever. He's willing to put Logan Paul in the ring. He's willing to put a giant mousetrap in the middle of WrestleMania. And then you listen to the fucking quarterly earnings call and they don't care whether people liked it or not. They only talk about whether it's successful or not. That should tell you right then and fucking there what their ideas are. I sat here and listened to Stephanie say, we got X amount of dollars for Pure Life water to integrate them into our show. And if you look at the integration of Pure Life into the show, it was that absolutely awful Xavier Woods with a water gun segment against John Morrison and The Miz. We got X amount of dollars from Netflix to promote Day of the Dead or whatever, Dawn of the Dead or whatever fucking movie that was. And what was that? That was the zombies eating The Miz on pay-per-view. They don't care whether you like it or not. They only care whether you actually saw it or not. And that kind of shit is absolute. Look, I call it scumbaggery. It's absolute scumbaggery. But it works. It works. That's why, it's not that NBC is paying them for their because again, these are people who think that the backlog material is actually more popular than the current material, which has always been false. WWE has been saying this again and again and again, and people just refuse to hear it. The backlog stuff from the 80s and the 90s, yes, there are certain fan bases that go back and watch that stuff. But the most popular shit is always the current material. Always. It's people who are having Peacock and watching this stuff for the current stuff, not for the stuff in the past. You know, so it's not that they have a library that they can bring to the table. They have content. Absolutely. That's part of it. But what drives, the bigger deals isn't the library. It is the eyeballs they're able to get today. If you get 1 million people to watch a show all at one time, even in a country of 300 million people, if you can get 100,000 people to watch something at one time, you're doing okay. That includes AEW. They can get 1 million people to watch their show at one time. That's not bad, because they have so many other options out there, But WWE is doing something that's on a different level, because they're doing it for NBC and all these other companies, major companies that pay them a lot of money. And I'm pretty sure, and it also involves sponsorships and all that other kind of stuff. So we have to make sure that we're on the right track when we're talking about this. It's not just, they have such a loyal fan base going back to, it's like people die, There's a lot of people who are huge, super huge wrestling fans with gigantic walls of action figures. Those people are going to die someday, right? They can only monetize you for so long. They're constantly looking to grab out and reach out and get new fans, going deeper and deeper into your child's, they have fucking WWE branded pet clothes and shit now. It's like, bro, they even going after your kid. They're not only going after you. You worried about them impressing you with their matches. They're going after your fucking kids. Now they're going after your fucking pets. They're going to have a WWE branded goldfish bowl in a minute. And people are going to be like, I'm going to put my goldfish in the WWE goldfish bowl. And that's going to be some more shit. They're going to go to NBC like, look at these motherfuckers, man. We got them buying doggy slippers. Give us more money. And NBC's going to be like, yeah, motherfuckers buying doggy slippers. Yeah, go ahead. Do your thing, man. That's the difference. That's the difference we're talking about here. And a lot of that WWE branded horse shit, the doggy food bowl and all that shit, a lot of that stuff is hardcore, not hardcore fans, it's casuals. They think it's cute. They think that shit is cute. A lot of the stuff that the hardcore fans say that they hate, even though they don't really hate it, you just hate that WWE does it, is all for casuals. That's all that shit is for. The giant mouse traps, the giant hands at WrestleMania, the Johnny Knoxville stuff, the Logan Paul stuff, all that shit is for casuals. They don't even expect you to watch Raw tomorrow night. They don't need you to. They just need WrestleMania to be successful. Once WrestleMania is successful, they can go to the shareholders, they can go to NBC, they can go to everybody and say, look what WrestleMania was able to do. God damn it. We win. But Raw's ratings are going down. They're getting the lowest ratings of all time. Then how come they keep making so much more money? Something is wrong here. Make it make sense. You're a wrestling journalist. You're supposed to know this. It's because they are masters at marketing. And they've learned how to shovel shit. They're literally selling ice in the tundra at some point. At some of these points, man, it's stuff that is absolutely ridiculous. And I sit back and I watch it and I just think to myself, like, man, I cannot believe people are falling for this shit. It's like being in the locker room sometimes and you're watching one of the fakest looking wrestling matches of all time, and yet people believe it. And you're like, people believe this shit. Did you see this? Like the greatest wrestling match ever. I'll never get over it. Meltzer was so worked up about that. I was like, bro, do you not understand marketing? That is so fucking dumb. You're dumb. Instead of just saying WWE is doing a marketing gimmick, pay it no mind. He was like, it's the greatest wrestling. It's not going to be the greatest wrestling match ever. And then try to give it an analysis. WWE didn't even believe it. Because they did like the end of the year reports and the greatest wrestling match ever was like at number 5 or some shit. Like, they just fucking with you at that point, right? They're fucking with you. And you're just kind of, you're so smart, you're dumb. And that's the saddest thing about it. Some of these people are so smart, they're stupid. You know, you can't believe this shit is actually going to occur. You can't believe WWE is doing this shit and getting away with it, but they are. Because they're very good at it. Vince is, like, they keep talking about that Vince McMahon Jedi mind trick. If it'll work on people that, you know, he's within arm's reach of, it's working through the fucking TV. You know, he can work people up pretty goddamn quickly. And for all the people that they say, oh, they turned away all of these fans, like, well, they ain't turned off enough of them. They keep making money. So enough of them ain't been turned away. So the secret to that success is just good marketing, man. It's gimmicks. They do good marketing gimmicks. And people fall for it.
So excuse me for not feigning concern when a company that's less than 5 years old puts in a good faith effort to appease their hardcore fans. Talk to you next time.
So, look. The problem with the whole Forbidden Door thing, as far as I'm concerned, it's not that it appeals to the hardcore fans. Who cares? It is, that's going to be an expensive show. It's going to be an expensive show. And because the Japanese guys have to travel. And they're going to, I'm guessing, make appearances on Dynamite to lead up to it and maybe coming out of it. Who's going to pay for that? Are New Japan going to pay for those guys, or are AEW going to pay for those guys? You know? And what is going to be the return of investment on that show? Oh, they sold all the tickets. Is it going to equal the amount of money spent on the show? Are they going to sell enough merchandise and all that kind of shit? Maybe. Maybe not. We don't know yet. And we may never know because all this is private information. But all of this was just one big long-winded defense of AEW doing something for their hardcore fans that most people don't give a shit about.
Skin tone, so why attach yourself and piggyback the wealth you didn't earn or lack yourself? I'm telling you to own up to your own success and failures. It's a reason why these sleazy guys